The breakfast tray had been sitting untouched for 20 minutes, then Rachel Monroe knocked on Arthur Bennett's door. From inside came the same sharp voice every caregiver on the floor already knew. "Don't come in." Rachel stopped. She waited, and then she noticed something the others had missed. Arthur wasn't looking at the food. He was holding a small framed photograph against his chest. If stories about ordinary people choosing kindness mean something to you, stay with me, and consider subscribing for more stories like this one. Arthur Bennett was 77 years old. At the care home, most people knew him by another description: difficult. He complained about his meals. He became irritated when someone opened his curtains. He hated having his belongings moved. If a caregiver entered too quickly, he would raise his voice. If someone tried to help without asking, he would pull away. "I can manage myself." After a few weeks, people had learned to keep their visits short, bring the meal, straighten the room, ask the necessary questions, then leave. No one was intentionally cruel to Arthur. The staff were busy. There were other residents who needed them, and after being snapped at several times, it became easier to believe Arthur simply wanted to be left alone. Arthur's daughter, Claire, had heard the same description. "He has always been stubborn," she would say. But even Claire knew something had changed after her mother Margaret died. Arthur and Margaret had been married for more than 50 years. They had built an ordinary life together. Nothing glamorous. Nothing anyone would write about in a newspaper, but it was theirs: morning coffee at the same kitchen table, a walk after dinner when the weather was good. Margaret complaining that Arthur never put anything back where it belonged. Arthur pretending not to hear her. Small things. Ordinary things. The kind of things people barely notice, until they are gone. After Margaret died, the house became painfully quiet. Eventually, Arthur and his family agreed that he needed more help with everyday life. Moving into the care home was supposed to make things easier. Instead, Arthur seemed angrier every week, and no one understood why. Rachel Monroe was 46. She had worked as a caregiver long enough to understand something important. Anger was not always the whole story. Rachel wasn't endlessly patient. She got tired. She went home with sore feet. Sometimes after a long shift she sat alone in her car for 2 quiet minutes before driving home. But Rachel had one habit. When someone was difficult, she tried not to ask only, "How do I make this person cooperate?" She also asked, "What am I missing?" During her first few mornings caring for Arthur, Rachel began noticing small things. Arthur became irritated when people moved the photograph on his bedside table. He complained when someone opened the curtains without asking. He became especially angry when staff knocked once and immediately entered. And although he often refused help, he seemed calmer whenever someone gave him a choice: tea or coffee, curtains open or closed, breakfast near the window or beside the bed. Tiny decisions, but Arthur treated them as if they mattered enormously. One Tuesday morning, Rachel stopped outside his room. She knocked. "Mr. Bennett?" There was no answer. Rachel waited. Then she knocked again. "I'm bringing breakfast." A pause. "Would you like me to come in?" Several seconds passed. Finally, Arthur answered. "Fine." Rachel entered. She didn't touch the curtains. She didn't move the photograph. She simply placed the breakfast tray where Arthur could see it. Arthur watched her suspiciously. "Aren't you going to open those?" He pointed toward the curtains. Rachel looked at them. "Only if you want them open." Arthur stared at her. It was such a simple answer, but something about it seemed to surprise him. "Everyone opens them," he muttered. Rachel pulled a chair closer, but before sitting down, she stopped. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Another pause. Arthur looked at her. Then he nodded, and Rachel sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Rachel looked toward the photograph on Arthur's table. It showed a younger Arthur, standing beside a smiling woman in a garden. Rachel didn't pick it up. She didn't ask a dozen questions. She simply said, "Is that your wife?" Arthur's expression changed, only slightly. "Margaret." Rachel nodded. "She looks happy." She was. His answer came quickly, then the wall went back up. Rachel could have changed the subject, but she didn't. She waited. Arthur looked down at his hands. Finally, he spoke. "She always asked." Rachel wasn't sure what he meant. "Asked what?" "Before touching things." His eyes moved toward the curtains. "Before moving my books, before throwing away some old paper, before changing something in the house." Arthur gave a small bitter laugh. "She used to drive me crazy asking questions." Rachel stayed quiet, then she asked softly, and now Arthur swallowed. "Now nobody asks." There it was, not a dramatic confession, Not some hidden mystery, just 3 words nobody asks. Arthur looked around the room. They come in, they open things, they move things, they tell me where I'm going, they tell me when I'm eating, they tell me when I should shower, they tell me what I need. His voice began to rise, but Rachel didn't interrupt. I know they're trying to help.
I know that.
His voice softened, but everything I had was already changed once. Arthur looked at Margaret's photograph. My house, my wife, my mornings, my chair, my garden. He pressed his lips together. And now, every little thing feels like somebody else deciding what happens to me. Rachel finally understood. Arthur wasn't angry because the curtains were open. He was angry because no one had asked before opening them. He wasn't fighting over a chair. He was fighting for the feeling. That part of his life still belonged to him. Rachel leaned forward slightly. What would help? Arthur looked surprised. What would make this room feel more like yours? For the first time since Rachel had met him, Arthur didn't have an angry answer ready. He looked around the room, then he pointed toward the door. Knock. Rachel nodded. And wait until I answer. Okay, and don't move, Margaret. He looked toward the photograph. Nobody touches that picture unless I say so. Rachel nodded again. Anything else? Arthur thought for a moment. Then something almost like embarrassment crossed his face. I like the curtains closed until after breakfast. Then we'll leave them closed. Arthur studied her carefully. That's it? That's it. No argument, no lecture, no promise that everything would suddenly become perfect. Just 3 small choices, but to Arthur, they meant something. Rachel spoke with the other caregivers. She didn't tell them Arthur had suddenly become easy, because he hadn't. She simply explained what she had noticed. Knock. And give him time to answer, ask before moving his belongings. And whenever possible, offer him a choice instead of telling him what was going to happen. The changes were small. At first, Arthur still complained. Some mornings, he barely spoke. Other days, he told Rachel the coffee was terrible. Even when she watched him finish the entire cup, but slowly, the sharpness began to soften. A few days later, another caregiver knocked on Arthur's door. She waited. Come in. Arthur finally called. When she entered, she asked, would you like the curtains open? Arthur looked at her. He noticed, after breakfast, of course. That was all. But Arthur didn't raise his voice. The following week, Rachel found Arthur carefully dusting Margaret's photograph with a soft cloth. This time, he told her about the picture without being asked. It had been taken in their backyard. On one of Margaret's birthdays. She hated that dress, Arthur said. Rachel smiled. Why did she wear it? Her sister gave it to her. For the first time, Rachel heard Arthur laugh. It lasted only a second, but somehow it changed the entire room. Over the next few weeks, Arthur began making small choices again. Some mornings, he wanted breakfast by the window. Other mornings, he wanted quiet. One afternoon, he agreed to sit in the garden for 20 minutes. Rachel had told him the roses had opened. Arthur looked toward the flowers, then immediately corrected her. Those aren't roses near the bench. Rachel smiled. What are they? Geraniums. I knew there was a reason I brought you out here. Arthur rolled his eyes, but he stayed. His daughter Claire noticed the difference during one of her visits. She found her father sitting near the window. Margaret's photograph was beside him. He was still Arthur. Still opinionated. Still quick to complain if his tea wasn't hot enough. But something about him felt different, less defensive. Less like he was waiting for the next person to take another choice away. Later, Claire found Rachel in the hallway. What did you do? Rachel shook her head. Not much, there has to be something. Rachel glanced toward Arthur's room. We started asking. Claire looked confused, so Rachel explained. For a moment, Claire said nothing, then her eyes filled with tears. I thought he was angry because he didn't want to be here, Rachel answered gently. Maybe part of him doesn't. But I think he mostly wanted to know that being here didn't mean he stopped having a say. That afternoon, Claire returned to her father's room. She picked up a sweater from his chair, then she stopped. Dad? Arthur looked up. Can I move this? Arthur stared at her. Claire thought he might make one of his sarcastic comments. Instead, he gave her a faint smile. Yes. Claire moved the sweater, then she sat beside him. Margaret's photograph rested on the table. Claire looked at it. Can I see Mom's picture? Arthur hesitated, then, carefully, he handed it to her. For several minutes, father and daughter sat together looking at the photograph. Arthur told Claire something she had never known. Margaret had almost refused to attend the party where the picture was taken. She thought everyone had forgotten her birthday, but Arthur had secretly invited the whole family. Claire laughed, then Arthur laughed too, and for a little while, room 214 didn't feel like the room of a difficult patient, it simply felt like Arthur's room. Sometimes, the person who seems hardest to reach isn't asking us to fix them. They're asking us to notice what they've lost. And sometimes, kindness begins with something as simple as knocking and waiting for an answer. If this story resonated with you, comment, "Kindness lives here." And if you have ever known someone whose anger was really hiding grief, loneliness, or simply the need to feel heard, share that memory in the comments, because someone reading your words may need a reminder. Behind difficult behavior, there can still be a person, hoping someone will ask why.